Dear Dharma friends and all practitioners, today is a Saturday, the 27th of September 2025. We have a topic for discussions today and keep on practicing. This week's topic is practicing Patriot Zen, focus on practicing. As the practice of Buddhism, we need to apply the knowledge to the practice. No matter how much we study, we need to put them down and start to the practice. It's just like we relied on the fingers pointing to the direction of the moon in order to see the moon. We don't attach to the fingers. So no matter what means that we use, what methods that we're practicing, we need to put that into action and practice. Don't pay attention too much to the knowledge or the words, but come back to the practice. The knowledge and the words can interfere with our practice. And if we don't practice, we won't be able to digest or understand the real meaning behind this knowledge or the words. So no matter if it's a direct or indirect methods that we're practicing, we still focus on the action of the practice. And based on the practice, and based on the help in the teaching of the Buddha and the Patriot, we continue to practice and just practice. When we practicing the Patriot Zen, we use the questions to raise the doubt. We don't attach to the questions. However, we use the questions in order to create a doubt. And we also depend on different people who working or not working. We have created our own schedule to practice. Even our discriminations still there. Are those frustration in practice still there in our life? It doesn't mean that we're running toward that. We use them as a reminder of those challenges, as a reminder to come back to our practice. We don't rely on those elusive thinkings of the mind, those illusions that we attach to, but we practice to go back to our true self, our true Buddha nature. If you still rely on those elusive thinking in the mind, you're still running after those diseases of the mind. And if you still attach yourself to those diseases of the mind, you won't be able to go back to the healthy body or healthy form of the Buddha nature. So the practice will help us to go back to our Buddha nature. The true Dharma is always detach ourselves from all those thinkings in the mind during the practice, and we shared our experience in practice through these sessions of questions and answer in order to remind each other to go on the right path, so we don't go on the wrong path. We don't attach ourselves to anything at all in the mind, and we correct our mistake. We use these questions and answer sessions to consolidate our practice and go on the right path. This is why we said that the right Dharma need to focus on the practice. And that's a topic for this week. And if you have any questions, want to share your own experience in your practice, go ahead and speak up. This afternoon, I listened to Yu Luk Zen Master Dharma talk. He mentioned about when we asking questions, we also focus on the pre-thinking aspect of the mind. And when I listened to you, you said that we focus on asking questions clearly and slowly. What is the difference between your teaching and Yu Luk Zen Master teaching? Our master or our patriot is always want us to start our practice from the superficial to deep layers of practice. The methods is difficult to use, just like when the Buddha said that when the Buddha talked about the Buddha nature has no forms. It's a formless. And how can he explain about a formless image like that? So he's using the means in order to help practitioners to understand. Just like there are there's no three levels of practicing. The Buddha used the three levels of practicing to help practitioner to enter the practice. When a patriot or our masters talking about looking or focusing on the pre-thinking aspect of the mind, when we asking the questions, that's the means of explanations. It's just like when we driving, it's not using our eyes to see the street. However, we also use our ear to listen. we're using all 6 senses in our driving. So the words right here, when the master use, those are just a means in to explain the way of practice. However, when the practitioner listen to these means of explanations, they always have some mistake in the understanding of these words and words of explanations. It's also like students, when they start to study, it's of course difficult for them to focus in their study, but they need to train themselves day by day, and eventually they'll be able to focus in their study. So same for practitioners. At first, the master and the patriarch use the means to help them to start the practice. However, we don't attach ourselves to those explanations. We don't attach ourselves to those words of explanations. We need to rely on that to go back to our practice. And eventually, the practice will make us understand the meanings. As sentient beings, they always want to understand, want the knowledge, and they always attach themselves to those and thought that's enough. And the more they attach, the more it's interfere with their practice. For practitioners, if they don't practice, they will be going in that path of attachment to words and explanations. They might always create all these thinkings, all these elusive thinkings, to lure them away from the practice. It's just like when we practicing the Patriarch Zen, the master said that when you close your eyes, you see the darkness. But when the listener listen to that explanations, he said that when you close your eyes, how can you see? And they don't realize the meanings of that seeing during closing the eyes. Everything is just forms and words of explanations. But when you practice, at first you couldn't see anything. However, eventually, step by step, when you practice, you'll be able to see and realize the meanings. We don't use that knowledge or attach to that knowledge and attach ourselves to those knowledge and thought that is a teaching of our master. It's just like a boss told follower to a security to guard the door and guard the house. However, the security, if he's pay attention to something outside, just like there's a party somewhere and he didn't pay attention to his responsibility and just run after those party, he will forget about his job, his responsibility about guarding up the house. When we have a responsibility of watching or guarding the home, that is our responsibility. We don't do anything else. We don't attach ourselves to anything else but that guarding of the house. Our mind is always created these knowledge or understanding instead of using them as a reminder to go back to the practice. When we're using the sixth sense to do anything, when we see anything or hear anything, those are the reminder for us to go back to the practice. The practice is what we're focusing on. As a practitioner, when we said that focusing on the pre-thinking aspect of the mind, the pre-thinking aspect of the mind, there's no thinking or not thinking that we can attach to. As Hu Van Zen Master said that the pre-thinking is when there's no thinking, any thinking happenings at this pre-thinking aspect of mind. But for people who just try to realize what is a pre-thinking aspect of the mind, that is the area that have no thinking, and they attach themselves to that no thinking as the pre-thinking. In fact, when we're talking about the pre-thinking, not thinking or thinking are both detached by our practice. We need to use our practice, our doubt, to sweep up both thinking or not thinking in the mind. This is why the masters always point out the problem that we had in order to remind us to go back to the practice. However, as a practitioners, we always attach to the words of explanations from our masters instead of using it as a reminder to go back to our practice. It's just like some practitioners, they thought that they can do the practice in all activities. When all the six senses are on, they still practicing. That's what they attach themselves to. However, as a real practitioners, when we ask the questions, we must have the doubt. When still do not have the doubt, asking questions, it's just like chanting a sentence. However, as Lai Quả, Zen Master said that even when you're chanting the questions without a doubt, just keep chanting the questions until you get the doubt. Then it's become asking the questions and raising doubt. When we do the practice, we based on our practice, we detach ourselves from any words of explanations our master. When our master talking about the seeing and asking going simultaneously using the clock, the hour hands, and the minute hands to explain about the practice. However, when we listen to his explanations, we thought that the asking is one form of practice and the seeing or watching is another form of practice, and they cannot go simultaneously. We couldn't understand the meanings of the watch, long hands and short hands that he explained about. And sometimes we understand the wrong way and we create our own practice accordingly. And we thought that we follow the instruction already without realize our own mistake that we created already. It's just like some people, they thought that they can do the practice at home already, and they keep doing the wrong methods, the wrong path, and not realizing that they're doing so. And for some patriots, Zen practitioner, they only had the names of practitioners in Patriot Zen's, but they don't go the right path. This is why we have these question and answer sessions in order to help new and old practitioner to ask questions when they have problem in their practice. And for some practitioners, when they practice, they couldn't realize their own mistake, but they realize the mistakes of their friends, their Dharma friends. They don't realize that they have lost their practice when they see the mistake from others. This is why the patriots always repeat themselves and point out the problem that we as a practitioners always had during the practice. So as a practitioners, when we listen to the Dharma talk, we use them as a reminder to go back to our practice, just as before the heaven and the earth came to existence. What was I? Ask it clearly, carefully, continuously. It's just like we chewing on the rotten wood, but just keep chewing on this rotten wood. Eventually, you will have a taste of that rotten wood. If you cannot ask questions when you open your eyes, you close your eyes and asking questions. But when you get used to asking the questions with closed eyes, you can open your eyes and you can still asking the questions. We don't oppose or suppress anything going on during the practice. We don't use our asking of questions and raising doubt to suppress anything, but just keep on asking questions and raising doubt. Any challenges, any images that we see during the practice, just use them as a reminder to go back to our practice. Any emotions, good or bad, love or hatred, don't attach yourself to any of those thinking. Just use them as a reminder to go back to your practice. The doubt will automatically sweep up all of those thinking for you when you have your practice. That is, you asking the questions and watching or seeing the pre-thinking aspect of the mind simultaneously. With the practice, eventually you will get familiar with your own practice and you can enter the stream of practice without thinking about the methods or thinking about all of these words of explanations. We don't put in our own opinions during the practice or put in our own knowledge about the practice, but just use them as a reminder to go back to our practice. We use these sessions to ask questions when you have problem in the practice in order to consolidate our practice on the right path. Is that understandable? Thank you for your words. My thinking when Venerable Pháp Thiện and Pháp Từ sharing his experience, I always have some thinking when they share their experience. I have a thinking, I have a understanding of their sharings, not because they are our Dharma friends in the monastery, and I realize my own path of practice. Just like when I share my own problem, I share that I couldn't realize my own problem at first, but now I can realize recently I realized that I always attach myself to the self. Any thinking that we had, I feel like I has already mistreated myself by running after the thinking. And every time when I saw the any thoughts going on in my mind, I learned to put it down, to renounce what the thinking, and go back to the practice. However, I couldn't do it very well right now. Sometimes I thought that I don't ask the questions. However, if I think like so, I feel like I couldn't practice on the right path. Could you give me some words of explanations on this? Words of encouragement on this? When we practice, we just ask questions and raising doubts. No matter if we have our Dharma friends, our relatives, our master next to us, we still need to go back to asking questions and raising doubt. Even anything going on in our mind, we don't try to renounce them, but just go back to asking questions and raising doubt. When a sadness came, do we still have the practice of asking questions and raising doubt? When the happiness comes, do you still have the practice of asking questions and raising doubt? When we have those thoughts going on in our mind, do we still have the practice asking questions and raising doubt going on in our mind? When we face with anything, no matter what's going on in our mind, we don't let that disease mind interfere with our practice. Our practice is a medication to treat that disease mind. It's not that we're looking for something else, another mind that we're looking for, but we're using the questions and raising doubts in order to treat that disease mind that we already had for long. So, as a practitioner, when we apply the practice in our daily activities, even when we doing our job, anything going on, we still go back to asking questions and raising doubt. We apply this in our activities in order to help us at first. We focus on the practice, nothing else. In short, when, like what Zen Master said, that when you have the doubt, still asking questions and raising doubt. When you don't have the doubt, still asking questions and raising doubt. Even when you have anything going on in the mind, still go back to asking questions and raising doubt. Any challenges going on, still go back to asking questions and raising doubt. When you need to ask questions, when you need to ask questions, then ask questions and ask the questions and then use the answers as a encouragement to go back to your own practice. So everything, we need to go back to our practice, asking questions and raising doubt. That's all we're doing. Is that understandable? Yes.